All right. Hi, everybody. It's our CFB Talk 198. We're going to go ahead and fire this up momentarily. Just getting everything all set up. I kind of was running just a little bit behind. Um, Hope everyone's been having a great day. This is Tuesday night. This is when we like to talk to you about whatever's going on in the world of college football. I'm going to go ahead and let you all know how you can join us. You can just hit request at the bottom left of the Twitter and it'll let you up here, and we'll hear whatever it is you'd like to talk about. I see we have a couple of requests. I'm gonna go ahead and let up a co-host, Andrew, who is part of our team here at RCFB. I'm gonna let up John, who's one of our regular guests here. And yeah, would love to hear from you. So lots of things going on, even though it's June. This is usually the dead month. We're starting to see that mix of stories that kind of show that people are trying to come up with material to talk about. Um, my favorite series, and I'm just going to get this out of there because in the last week, we do these every Tuesday night. So it's always a nice opportunity to see things that have happened. One of the more amusing kind of series of tweets where all the schools talking about what they are the best at. And it started with a beer price ranking, which showed that Tulane and the University of Louisiana and Lafayette, those two had the lowest beer prices. In fact, Tulane, I believe, is like $3 for a beer in New Orleans, which seems perfect. I love New Orleans. I've been to Tulane campus, been to the Superdome to cover the national championship before. It's a great environment. And obviously, they've got Ullman Stadium, which is an awesome venue with the angry wave sitting on the southern end zone. So that launched it. They said, what more could you ask for? We've got $3 beers. So Louisiana Lafayette kind of jumped in there and kind of said, hey, we're actually a little bit cheaper or something like that. But then the real kind of creativity came in. All credit to the folks at BYU. They announced that they have the home of the coldest chocolate milk in college football. So that kind of they really embrace that the humor that a lot of people have for our friends over in Provo. And then Mississippi State declared it had the best cheese in college football. Now that one, there are a lot of schools that could dispute that. But the one school, and I'm not surprised to see them jump into this, was Wazoo. Washington State noted that, of course, their Cougar Gold is quite a popular one. And they said, we'll see you in Pullman for a Cougar Gold plus football real soon. Some of the more funny ones that popped up, Louisiana Tech. This is so adorable. They declared themselves to have the best live mascot in a remote controlled car in college football. So they have a little graphic of the Louisiana Tech Bulldog sitting in a little remote controlled car. It's actually kind of awesome. So that one's hard to dispute. And then I believe Iowa State has decided to declare they have the best pedestrian bridge in college football. Where, if you don't know the story about this, they spent a fortune on this bridge to kind of connect. They're in the middle of a huge process. They're going to develop the area around the stadium out there in Ames. So one of the important things is they try to first get some of this infrastructure built in. And so they built this monster pedestrian bridge to get people across from one parking lot to another. So they're really proud of the bridge. The Iowa State fans kind of love to joke about it. They love to say, like, in bridge we trust, all of that stuff. So there are some fans, I think, that are disputing that. I've been to Oregon. They have a nice bridge that goes to Autzen Stadium. I don't live far from Ames either. So it's been kind of a fun little dispute out there. If you've seen it on X, it's kind of what makes it silly and fun. And it's always fun to see a lot of these athletic staffs, particularly in the offseason, coming up with material to do. And then one final note. There was a really great post, but I'm going to credit this user, Wisco Wonder, Badgers fan. He said, it's time to remascot each state's largest public university to reflect the most prevalent animal in each state. So we're going to take the largest. So UCF is a huge number of students. So that's the largest in Florida. Texas A&M in Texas, like the largest number of students. So who got ranked? They said, well, who's going to be the number one animal? Well, the joke is each and every school gets rebranded as the ants because we're going by the most prevalent animal. My favorite, personally, is the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign ants, which, of course, isn't a champagne ant, but it kind of works well there. But anyway, now I got all of that stuff out of the way because this is serious time, serious talk here on RCFB Talk. Andrew, what's going on? What's on your mind?
Not too much. How are you doing, Baba?
Well, that was a first. Okay, we're going to restart this. So Hey, everybody, if you're joining us back again, thank you. That was definitely a first. I guess Twitter didn't like that one. Usually that's how we fix it when there's an audio difficulty. Sometimes it happens. So we're back. And if you've come back to join us, really appreciate it. John, what's on your mind?
Hey man, how you doing? Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you, man. No
Oh,
problem.
okay. Hey. I was about to make sure the audio is working this time.
Yeah, no, trust me. Every time it's comedy. I swear, isn't it? That's just it's how it is with these things. So anyway, what's on your mind, man? Who knows? We'll probably get a few people that straggle back in, but sometimes it happens.
Well, they released today, college NCAA college football 25 released the top 10 list of the most loudest stadiums in the country.
Hmm.
And Texas A&M was number one, which the internet was taking so well and gracefully like they do on everything. I'm just kind of curious what you think about Texas A&M being the number one most toughest place to play in the country.
You know, I admit it is just a video game, so I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure they came up with some interesting proprietary method to come up with this, but ultimately, I'd be curious to see how much of a difference it'll make when you're talking about the upper echelon. I've seen how it's supposed to work. It's supposed to make things scramble a little bit when you're planning your plays if you're on offense or if you're the opposing team visiting. But I'd be curious to know how much of an impact that really does make. But I think it's great. It's great to get people talking. I mean, look at it. They've strategized. Oh my gosh, boy, it's an even. They've strategized it to be able to get people to keep talking about the game, and that in that way, sense, it's working. But I know, Andrew, you have some thoughts on this, and I now I've got you back up here. Sorry about that. That was such a hiccup. Usually that reset doesn't affect the entire space, but every week it's a new surprise on Twitter. So here we go. What's up, Andrew?
Oh, hey there. Okay. John just posted the top 10. I'll just run down the top 25 just real quick. Going from 25 up, Davis
Oh,
Wade
sure.
Stadium, that's Mississippi State. Albertson Stadium, that's Boise State. Donald W. Reynolds Razorback Stadium, that's Arkansas. Then you've got, I'll just go with the teams now. Michigan State, Notre Dame, Iowa, Texas, Utah, Virginia Tech, Michigan, South Carolina, Auburn, Tennessee, Clemson, Oregon, and here's your top 10. Florida, Florida State, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Penn State, Georgia, Ohio State, LSU, Alabama, and then, as previously said, Texas A&M. I don't necessarily have any gripes with any of these, but like you said, it's getting people talking, that's for sure. And it is a good mechanic. I think this is the first time they've had it since like 2006, NCAA 06, thereabouts. And I know that was a requested feature that a lot of people wanted to bring back. And it does have a pretty decent impact, to be honest. It makes the controller shake. It makes the receiver buttons turn into question marks, so you don't know which button to press. And also, like you said, it kind of makes the route lines wobbly, so you don't know exactly where they're going.
Hmm. No, that's interesting. John, I see your hand up, and then I'm going to let up Ski Masks Murphy.
Yeah, the last thing I want to mention on this is, of all the debate and people angry online, I think most people miss in the very tiny text they put in the bottom right corner of the graphic is rankings are subject to change. So none of this really can matter by the fifth or sixth week of the season anyway. But I think that was my favorite part of this, the fact that I think they got essentially what they wanted, and they got people mad online, and they now they got people to talk about the game right before the release. So
That's it, exactly.
it's a beautiful thing to witness every and it's gonna get better because I believe Thursday or Friday they're gonna put team rankings overall rankings for teams based off overall. So that's gonna be another fun conversation.
I'll
I can't
just
wait to see it. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
I'll just, like John said, there are other reveals coming later this week. Tomorrow is going to be a sights and sounds deep dive, which I'm assuming is going to be like the uh, previous video, just telling a little bit more about the game. And then on Thursday, it's going to be the top offenses and defenses. And then on the 28th, they're going to go ahead and do the overall team power rankings. So this is going to be a very uh, filled week for information on this game.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that translates. I'm very curious to see how the sales go. I hope it goes great, but I'm also always a little worried. I'm like, for example, I thought Furiosa was going to do great in the box office, and it was a bomb. So you never know. Maybe it'll be great. I'm hoping. I hope people love this game. It'll be great to see it come back. Ski Mask, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I was going to talk about the NCAA game as well.
Sure.
I'm glad it's finally working. I had to switch from my computer to my phone. Every time it pulled me up, it just cut all audio.
Yeah.
So now we're cooking. But yeah, because I am in the subreddit for the game that's existed for years. And the funny thing is, like, once it went up, everyone agreed with everything except for Texas A&M having the number one spot. Because everyone was just sort of citing like the amount of times we've seen them lose on their field, especially in recent years. But in the game, it's
Hey, they just lost their baseball coach.
yeah,
Not to drive that knife in, but
yeah. If only them and Texas still consider one another rivals, this would be a way better story. But yeah, it's one of the systems in the game that sort of, I mean, it sort of works for like play now, but once you get inside the dynasty franchise mode, it's something that ebbs and flows with how teams perform. So
yeah.
I mean, it's something for people to talk about, but it's not important
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping
overall.
because it's sort of funny. Gosh, years ago when I was playing the game a lot, probably again before 2010, which dates me quite a bit. But I remember like sometimes you'd have fun just seeing like starting a dynasty just to see how badly you could tank a team. And then by the end, like the stadium's totally quiet. And I always used to get a kick out of that. But I'm sure it's gonna be quite fascinating to see how this all pans out. One other quick story just to throw in here. This one amused me. I have no idea where it's going to go. It might not go anywhere. It might have been just kind of a wild. I don't know. Goose chase is the wrong word for this, but a Nebraska region. So again, University of Nebraska, Huskers fans, serious college football fans. I mean, the success they've had over the years has been tremendous, especially in the past. But also, they have a passionate. Just people support them a lot. So a regent of the University of Nebraska has proposed allowing Huskers fans to be buried at Memorial Stadium. I am not entirely sure the logistics of this. If they're going to be allowing like I don't know, like putting cremated remains in the walls, or are they just going to straight up start digging it up and like Jimmy Hoffa making sure they're in the foundations. I'm not sure where they're going with this, but it's bringing up the usual humor. One of our friends, Commodore N7, let players be pallbearers so they can let them down one last time. We all know that joke. We've heard that joke, but no QBs because they don't want to fumble them into the wrong grave. And again, somebody was like, "This." One of the Nebraska fans are having fun with this too. One of them, Lakes and Rivera's. He's like, hey, he's imagining a regents having this conversation. Was one regent talking about NIL investments? The second one, game day alcohol sales. The third one, after perhaps taking some substances, let's just make our stadium a cemetery. The funny thing is, I think some of the Aggies fans of Texas A&M were also kind of jumping in, like, well, we have, they don't actually bury the past dog mascots in the stadium. I believe they bury it next to the stadium. Although I believe Georgia may bury them under the stadium. Like, I don't know. Lots of rumors of what people are doing with their stadium grounds. But that one was definitely one you don't normally hear. So we'll see if that goes anywhere. Let's see here. John, I see your hand up. Are you planning to bury anyone in Memorial Stadium in Lincoln?
Yeah, I was curious. Depending on your donation level, does that determine where you get buried? If you're just like a poor bronze level donator, do you get buried under the urinals or like something this awful like that? I'm just curious, like where what amount of money gets, like if you're on the mega donators or you're right in the end zone. I don't know. It's a very weird. I know someone's gonna do it. I mean, let's be honest. Some people are definitely, there's probably already as a wait list for this, but I'm just kind of curious where you get buried. But I did have a more serious question. I saw something from you guys' account today about regarding the NCAA not testing for marijuana
Hmm.
for postseason play. I was a little confused by the wording of the tweet, but is that just for regular season? Is that just for postseason play? I'm just kind of curious what that potential
Yeah, no, it's the
potential.
way, and I'm looking at a better written article on this. So I'm going to go with the lead off the Athletic because they have some competent writers, and Chris Vanini's always been a great guy, friend of the show. He's been on here a couple times as a guest. But the NCAA Division One Council voted Tuesday to remove cannabinoids from the banned drug class for specifically NCAA championships and postseason football, effective immediately. So. Yeah, I think this is going to be just those areas, and that's tricky because again, for college football, there's only so many areas where the NCAA gets to really pipe in there. Andrew, did you want to add something to one of the earlier points?
Uh, well, let's finish this conversation, then I'll jump back in.
Oh no, I don't think there's much more to it. I mean, that's what it is because the question was: is it affecting the whole season or is it the postseason? And as far as we know right now, this is an NCAA change that'll affect postseason bowls, and we'll see how far that even goes into the culture. But that's more of a basketball thing than it is a football thing. But yeah, Andrew, did you want to chime in?
Not necessarily on that topic.
Well, what topic would you like?
Although I guess this is a intoxicating substance. We did just finish up the College World Series. Congratulations to the Vols, their first championship. I wanted to give everyone an update, I guess, on the Jello shots total for the College World Series.
Yeah, I believe the Vols won that too.
Yeah. For everyone that doesn't know, there's a bar in Omaha right next to.
Oh, it's right across the street. And it's actually a fairly new bar. I didn't realize that until I finally did a Google Street View. It's not that old. Or at least that location isn't. But yeah, I know last year LSU though I think set the record that may never be broken. It was like 60,000 or something like that. Just like that's a lot of Jello. And to be fair, this isn't like they're not reaping in a huge amount of profits. It's like going to charity in some extent, at least whatever I assume the profit margin is. So they're doing some good work with that. It's Rocco's, as I recall. In fact, one of our reporters, he was actually tweeting a little bit from Omaha this week because he was down there for that game, for some of the games, I should say. And yeah, no, that is something to see. And then UVA let everyone down. Last year was Stanford, but this year Virginia. I don't know, man. You guys just don't. I mean, maybe they could have made it Zima flavored. Would that have worked a little more? I'm not sure. That's a really old reference for.
That's a throwback, man.
Yeah, they were teased. UVA fans were historically teased for being the Zima drinkers. Which again, for those of you who are under probably 35. It was a clear malt beverage. Kind of trying to get into that market. Didn't quite take off. But yeah, so what was the final total? I mean, what did Tennessee hit up there?
So the final total for Tennessee, and this year one was the according to them, we've sold more shots than any year before, which means more money donated than ever before. So the final total ended up being, oh wow, oh wait, no, that's from last year. So the final total was Tennessee with 38,340. Just in behind them, surprisingly, very close, was Texas A&M with 32,000.
Oh yeah, they were racing to the end. Somebody created a dynamic chart that showed all the schools moving past each other.
Let's see. So Texas A&M was 32,645. Just a quick shout out to Kentucky, who got 69,69.
They really stop there?
Yep, it's 6969 or 6,969.
Oh yeah,
If you
no,
want to be a bit more proper.
some guys were like, all right, everyone, we're just gonna stop. Like, somebody said, no, call this one for Tennessee or A&M or whoever. Like, just don't credit it to us anymore. We're done. I'm sure the other fans were totally fine with that too. I mean, that's great. I love it. That's stupid. That's stupid fun. I mean that in the best way possible. That's what we love about college sports. When silly stuff happens, like all those tweets we were talking about in the initial attempt at starting this X space, where all those college football teams were comparing their best beer prices, chocolate milk, all of that stuff.
And then I just found the Daily Advertiser. I don't know. Oh, that's through the USA Today network. The record was LSU.
Yeah, it's 63,000 last year.
68,888.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. I don't know if anyone's going to beat that. Hey, Elizabeth, what's going on? Were you going to add to that? Oh, Elizabeth, if you get a chance, hit unmute. I'm going to let up Mage.
Sorry, unmute.
No worries.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
Awesome. Since we're on the topic of LSU and the Jello shots, can we just briefly touch upon Texas A&M losing their coach to Texas? That is crazy.
Is it though? I don't know. It's kind of like I sympathize because I have no horse in the race in this wonderful state of Texas and all of the pecking order and all of the but this is the perfect level of drama because they poached him from TCU. That's a whole other drama. I'm not going to get into that.
Oh yeah, I actually didn't know that, but okay.
But it kind of went to it was so funny. I didn't tweet it, but one of the guys who was coming up with some of the jokes that were coming up on our Twitter account, I told him like, this is like that. There's always a bigger fish, meme that came out of the Star Trek, not Star Trek. Goodness. Hi, fellow kids. No, the Star Wars prequels. So it was yeah, my goodness. Cause you feel bad for them, but that's always what it ends up being. I see a couple of hands that flew up. Ski Mask, Murphy, then John, and also I'm going to let up Nate as well. Please, if you want to stay up, by all means, stay up and talk. I love these kinds of conversations. But Ski Mask, what did you want to say?
Yeah, on this Texas to Texas sort of fiasco, it's weird because like you go from like losing, then giving an interview saying, yeah, we lost, but I love Texas A&M. I moved my family to Texas, yada yada yada, and within 24 hours, he's gone.
Yep.
This is stuff that Arkansas coaches do. I just like to say it. Almost
Ski Mask. Come on.
This is like a very Arkansas University move, either leaving Arkansas or going there. And you would think like, oh, he just barely lost. You think he would stay, but this is like a perfect story for baseball.
Well, it's like 2.8 million. I think his buyout was that.
Oh, it's so cute when the buyouts are only that much compared to what some of these college football buyouts have become.
Yeah,
my goodness.
I was going to say I have no idea if that's much for a baseball coach because Jimbo still due 70 million.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Jimbo's getting probably 10 million a year, right? Something like that. It's ridiculous.
Jimbo tax. The Jimbo tax.
I believe the way all their contracts are set up is like by the end of like that academic year, they got to give a certain amount of the total amount there. I think it's like a third to like half.
Well, yeah, so, Arkansas is literally paying for 3 coaches. I don't want to talk about it, but they are. It's really sad.
Oh my goodness! At least John L. Smith isn't still one of them. That's all I got to say.
Oh my gosh! Flashbacks. No. His $40 million land deal in Kentucky.
Oh yeah, no, his whole life was just such an interesting train wreck.
Yeah.
But smile. That's the one thing I'm gonna always remember. Smile. Oh my goodness. Hey John, your hand's up as well, and then we'll get to some of the new folks that came up.
Yeah, I would say color me shocked. You're telling me a coach who went in the press conference said he wasn't going to leave, then left? Oh my goodness.
I don't even think he said he wasn't going to leave. He said like that was an unfair question or an inappropriate question. It's like, no, it's not. The reporters are supposed to ask you things that are relevant. They're not supposed to, I mean, I always find that humorous because, to be fair, you're not hiring a coach because they're necessarily a master of PR, or what, they're not as careful with their words always as, like, let's say, an attorney, or as a professional PR person. But all of that said, like, that was like he was telegraphing it terribly. And because I remember, like, for example, I was there in the press conference with Jim Harbaugh after the Michigan game. We all knew he was gone. Like, no one thought he was staying. And people asked him, and he just eventually he never said no. He would just kind of turn it into, what, isn't it wonderful what we just achieved? And then they finally just said, like, can I just enjoy this for a second? I just remember when he said that, and I was like, yeah. I mean, I get that that's about all you can do as a coach, but to say the question wasn't appropriate, that was silly. That's like, the press is supposed to do that. But yeah, then of course, you get the whole meme of, like, he gone. Well, no, truly, he gone. And even worse, to Texas, which has really got to hurt. It's both funny, and I sympathize with our friends in Aggieland, because that one had to smart.
Yeah, I was gonna say he must be the first coach to ever do that. The leave after you say you're staying. I mean, I'm just I know. But
Oh my goodness. Well, again, no one ever wants to be June Jones. June Jones, I've said this before, was the poster child of it going completely wrong, and everybody learned from that. For those who don't remember, he'd been at Hawaii. He made a real splash in college ranks at Hawaii. Went to SMU, and then it looked like Arizona State was going to hire him. He was basically saying, "Yeah, I'm going to Arizona State," and then the deal fell through. And really, really awkwardly, he stayed at SMU, and he was not the same coach after that. In fact, he kind of went like I think he went a season and then a fifth, because he went like one season that was terrible, and then 2 games into the next season, and just like, I'm done. And then I don't think he's kind of like walked away. But that's a June Jones lesson we all learned. I want to allow a couple of other folks to get in some words. Mage Ingrid, it's been a minute. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So, surprise, surprise, J.J. Redick, he's the new Lakers coach, which I'm like, okay, that's weird. I'm like, he ain't even been out of the NBA for like too long either, right?
Yep, he had one of the funniest answers to a question I've ever heard today in a press conference, which is, I don't give a F. I just, yeah. So, yeah, no, that was an interesting one. What else is on your mind?
Saw the Stanley Cup final last night. that last that last 15 seconds was absolutely hilarious because it literally ended with a fight at the corner of the wall. That was funny. I'm like, what the heck is this sport of hockey?
That's actually pretty common tactic, to be honest. I'm a huge Tampa Bay Lightning fan here. Florida is the state of hockey right now, at least it comes to pro hockey. But anyway, in 2021, we held the puck against the boards for like a good 30 seconds. I guess it's almost the equivalent of soccer teams kind of staying in the corner next to the flag when they're trying to chew down clock. So it's frustrating if you're the other team, but it's very sound tactic.
Hey, I see a hand up with a ski mask, and then I'd love to get to Nate as well.
Yeah, in soccer they apply the same tactic. Generally, we call it shielding, whereas like you just make a shield around the ball and like don't try to do anything. So yeah, it's a sound tactic just to leave it in the corner. Or in I think the other thing my friends used to call it that I didn't know who played hockey would call it dumping, when they don't even try to actually score. They just literally flick the puck on the other half of the ice and make the other team go back and get it. I watched the game. They did it like the last 5 minutes. It was hilarious.
That's interesting to learn. I learned about hockey anyway, so sorry.
No, I'm glad. I don't know a whole lot about it, even though I live in Minnesota. It's I have participated in one hockey celebration that ended up with tear gas, but that was the first year I moved here. But hey, the Gophers won the national championship. Woo!
Oh my goodness.
Wait, if you're in Minnesota, you should interview the hair guy.
The hair god?
The hair guy. There's like some guy who makes this thing called like the all hair team for like high school hockey in Minnesota.
I could see that. Yeah.
It's a hilarious thing, and it's like just some random guy. You should probably interview him.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, no, I've reached my kids. One of my oldest kids is in middle school now. He's reached the year where some of the kids are leaving to go to the serious hockey schools. Like, It's funny how that works. I mean, I find it fascinating. It's great. People love it here. I grew up in Bakersfield. It wasn't really a hockey town. Wasn't really anything in town. We had pollution. We were like number 2 in the country in air pollution. That was like our claim to fame. It was like Los Angeles, Bakersfield, and then Fresno. The rest of the country, you can all go, breathe clean air. That wasn't our business. No, no, no. If you can survive that, maybe you get a voice like mine. I don't know, but it's either that or asthma. I'm not sure. But anyway, Nate, you've been super patient. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you? It's been a while since I've been on this.
Glad to have you. What's on your
Yeah.
mind?
Well, so just as a reminder for everyone, I'm a Longhorn fan. So, yeah, the whole
Come on.
Texas A&M baseball thing. It's been. I have a lot of friends that are Aggies, and I would just say go, have a talk with them and give them a pat on the back and check on them. It was. I mean, yeah, I know we say it's just like you're not expecting like some guy to say I'm not leaving and then leave, but I honestly was pretty shocked, and I mean. I feel bad for them, but at the end of the day, we're always the bad guys. So I welcome him to the Death Star, and looking forward to bringing Texas baseball back.
Yeah, you guys go into the SEC. You might as well arm yourself with a really good head coach because SEC baseball is really where it's at. I mean, historically, back in the day, it was like Pac-10, like especially when Arizona State and especially USC were just ripping it out. It was so funny. I got in a conversation with some folks. I'm like, in the '70s, it was actually kind of scary how LA was pulling all sports at one point. It was like there are years where you just look down the list and it would be like USC football, UCLA basketball. You could just pretty much set your clock to UCLA basketball winning a championship for like 10 years there. And then, baseball would be, USC or Arizona State. It was like a wild decade there where it was just, it was unbelievable how much domination was coming out of that region. And now,
they
no
don't exist anymore.
Not really. It's not the same. It ain't the same. That's for sure.
But yeah, so it's been a wild day, and I'm sure come November that's gonna be brought up when they bring the game back.
I can't. That has to be one of the most anticipated return of a game is seeing Texas and Texas A&M finally play each other again. I'm not again. I have no dog in that fight, but I'm looking forward to finding out how that goes because everyone is. That's going to be. I can't even imagine what the ticket prices are going to be.
Yeah, and so that kind of ties into my the next thing I wanted to bring up. I kind of wanted to go back to the stadium rankings thing. I know it's just like the video game and all that stuff, but are people actually shocked that A&M is ranked number 1 or like just pretty high? Because personally, me, like I'm a Longhorn, but a lot of friends that are Aggies, and I've been to that stadium multiple times. I was actually at the last first Texas A&M game, and I mean, they're not always the best team, but it is one of the most loudest and hostile environments I've ever seen and been to. And I was actually kind of shocked that LSU wasn't higher on that list because that's probably another school that I feel like is always very.
They certainly have a reputation. Yeah,
yes,
they do.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've been to Autzen, and that's really loud. I remember I was at a game in Ohio Stadium, and then you're dealing with the sheer number of people that fit in that stadium. And I was near the field for that one, and I remember at the end of the first half, my ears were ringing. So yeah, I kind of think they had to just pick a team, and no matter who they picked, there would have been some back and forth, no doubt. And I think they picked a good one to be number 1, only because A&M is just got enough galvanizing material to get people talking. And again, if you get people talking, people are talking about the video game. So I think that's certainly part of it. Andrew, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I know this is kind of going back really quick, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I garnered the wrath of Minnesota fans or Minnesotans last night and today. I posted a pretty innocuous tweet in light of the Stanley Cup being won, saying, forget Minnesota, Florida is the state of hockey. Mentioning alluding to the fact that Florida has been in 20, 21, 22, in 5 straight Stanley Cups and won 3 of them. Tampa in 20 and 21, and then of course Florida last night. And for those who don't know, Minnesota is known as the state of hockey because it's
the state of hockey.
exactly it's the state of hockey for a reason. But oh boy, I did not realize how much I could have pissed off Minnesotans with that little tweet. I wasn't expecting it to go anywhere. I was like, maybe a few of the people that follow me on Twitter might see it. It got 35,000 views.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll do it. It's so funny. I again, I live here, so I kind of get that. I mean, I'm a transplant, so I'm not like I didn't live and breathe like I don't know. I was gonna try and pretend to know a hockey player from a long time ago, but and they're gonna end up being Canadian. That's why I don't want to name them. But at the same time, like Gordie Howe, like I don't know. But at the same time, yeah, no, that would have those them's be fighting words. You're gonna get some. Oh, that's a wrong statement you just made there, or I always. By the way, so when I moved here, I quickly figured out like what are the little accent tweaks here in Minnesota. So if you ever meet someone from Minnesota, maybe especially northern Minnesota, or as we like to call it, outstate, which really makes no sense, or especially nearby parts of Wisconsin like Eau Claire, ask them to say the following sentence. I'm going to try and say straight accent here, normal, my own voice. Oh my God, Margie, park the car and get on the roof. There is a moose on the loose. Oh, and if you can, like, grab your bag and scarf and get on the roof. And then every single possible Minnesota twang is going to pop up in that particular sentence. It's going to end up coming, and again, can't quite nail it exactly. It's going to be like, oh my gosh, Margie, park the car and get on the roof. Grab your scarf, grab your bag. There's a moose on the loose. Like that, you'll trigger every one of those things inside their ice cold Minnesota heart. No, they're not. But you'll get that. Trust me. If you've been here long enough, you get a little weird about it. Oh my gosh! See a hand up here on Nate, and then we'll get to Gigagump, who's been really patient.
Yeah, so I live in Denver, Colorado right now. So there's a couple of people from Minnesota out here. So I'll try and find a native Minnesotan that lives out here and ask them, and I will report back.
Oh yeah, and if you really want to, they get really embarrassed with roof because they tend to say rough, like a dog barking, like in a cartoon. Like that one honestly threw me off. I remember because I was in the grad school in Minnesota, and I ended up on the University of Minnesota, was like Board of Regents grad student rep, like not a regent. But I remember I was hearing people who were brilliant, and then suddenly they'd be like, "Well, the bonding bill, we have to figure out the rough repair," and I'm like, "The what?" Like where like where what did I just hear that, like a record skip freeze frame, like, oh right, I'm in Minnesota right now, I moved here. But absolutely. But Gigagump, what's going on? You've been really patient.
What's up, man? Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure can.
Yeah, so going back to the stadium loudness rankings, they got Alabama up there at number 2, and when I saw that, obviously I'm a big Alabama fan. I was flattered, but I'm also a realist, and I've been to many games in Bryant-Denny, and I've heard it get very, very loud in there. Rocky Block comes to mind. Julio Jones catching screen pass, running up and beating LSU. Iron Bowl 2008. I've definitely heard it, get really loud in there. What I don't understand is this stat that they've given to that, where like a home winning percentage like played heavily into rankings. So if you're going by that, I get why Alabama's up there at number 2. But if that's a big stat, I'm not sure what Texas A&M's home winning percentage has been in the last decade. If anybody can clear that up for me. But I'm curious why they get put at number 1. If anything, I feel like LSU should be number 1. But if somebody wants to chime in and kind of inform me on
sure. Well, let's get some of the other. I see a couple of hands that went up there. I personally think it's just to get people talking, and you have to put someone at number 1. And I think maybe putting someone a little spicy at number 1 certainly doesn't hurt. My other thought was just I want to repeat is I don't know how much of an impact being number 1 versus number 10 is. I think it might just be a certain threshold in the game. But I could be wrong. Let's see. I saw Ski Mask's hand go up. Then I saw Nate's, and then we'll also get to Nissan.
Okay, so I don't want to get too technical about it, because I mean I've played way more of the game than I would like to admit I have of the whole series, but
Mhm.
the toughest places to play, the way that system works, is not really about how loud stadiums are in real life. It's more how the game decides to grade a team's performance at home and versus their stadium size and capacity and their average attendance and how loud that'll actually make the stadium in the game versus other places because it's mostly it is based off historic like your total historical home winning percentage at that stadium and also like the past 4 years and also how have you performed against ranked opponents which at home which Texas A&M is a little over the place but in the game the way in the system like overtime it basically
Mhm.
how it starts out really means a decent amount but over time it means nothing because it can change very quickly because I'm pretty sure other people in here who've probably played the game, you've probably made Bowling Green State the toughest place to play, just because you went on maybe a 70 game winning streak at home. So it's a system in the game. It does things, but it's not as important as they make it in. This is probably one of those moments where they typically say when people make lists for social media, they always make something intentionally wrong just to get the attention. So I think
Yeah.
putting
Yeah.
Texas A&M first may have been that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't expect this one to dominate so much of the conversation. I don't find it a problem, but I'm like, yeah, that's proof that that worked, didn't it? Nate, your hands up.
Yeah, so hearing Ski Math, hearing you kind of like talk about how the game mechanic is like set up, like that, I guess like that gives a kind of different perspective. But I guess for me, where I'm coming from is like the real life perspective, and
Mhm.
I know I think for most people, A&M didn't really get on the map until they got into the SEC, and then they had the big game against Bama, and they had Johnny Manziel and all that stuff. But I think why they got a lot of credit is because traditionally A&M is one of the most devout fan bases. Like they do a lot of weird things, and I mean that in a respectable way. And I think if you're a subcore Aggie, you'd have to kind of agree with this. I mean, it's the things of where they do their little chant thing where they lock arms and swing back and forth. They have things where like they don't you don't boo, you hiss the reps. They most of the time they stay for the entire game, and I know that's other schools do that as well. And then another thing is they have this thing where they like the students don't they're not allowed to rush the field, and in the past like 20-30 years I think they've only rushed the field like twice,
Mhm.
and I'd say they've had opportunities to do that multiple times. So again, just I think the reason why they got a lot of credit is it really is a tough place to play. I'm not saying that they should be number one, but or not necessarily a tough place to play, but it is a place that gets very loud and like their fans are very devout and very passionate. So I like I said, I think that's where they got credit from.
Yeah, and I think that's totally legitimate. 'Cause certainly, they must have also had a lot of fun creating a lot of that atmosphere. Because I know that's been something they've been emphasizing on point, particularly in the lead up to the release. Let's see here, Nissan Lee, what's going on?
Hey man, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good man. Just wanted to go over the top 10 toughest places to play list.
Sure.
I've been to Bryant Denny. I'm an Ole Miss fan, so I've seen my team get smacked at Bryant Denny and Tiger Stadium, and hasn't been fun. But I will say they are two very tough places to play, and I agree with the others at A&M. Although it does have a loud atmosphere. Like, what has A&M? What home game has A&M won other than that like 7 overtime game at Bama? You know.
Yeah, I think it definitely was designed to spice some folks up. I wonder who do you now since people have been giving ones a light, who do you have put number one?
I'd put Tiger Stadium at number one.
Yeah.
I also
I think
think
that's
that
the odds up. That would have been the safe bet. I think that would have been the least controversial.
yeah, and
And
like
again, maybe that was why they didn't, like, let's just switch this one. Again, I don't blame them for doing it because again, when the game comes out, people are going to play it, they're going to like it, and people are now thinking about it still. Um, but again, I do wonder also, as I said, I don't know how much nuance the game's going to give to like a point one difference or however the system is calculating it. Do you once you pass the threshold, is it just going to be like it's just a hard place to play?
yeah, and my
Um,
last my last thing. Do you think any teams got snubbed off the top 10? I'm thinking like Virginia Tech or Clemson.
Boy, that's an interesting one. Clemson's not a bad one. Virginia Tech, the intro and is quite. It's like I'm just thinking recentism here. I don't know. Is it because you think maybe? Oh, I see a couple of hands up. I'd love to get other thoughts on that. Let's say John, and then we'll get to Giga Gump. If you say
I would.
ODU, man, I swear. No.
I'm not trying to get kicked off. Hey, for Virginia Tech game, we get pretty loud, but that might be the one time a year. But I was gonna say I grew up going to Virginia Tech games, for the 2000s and 2010s. Maybe if this was 15 years ago, Tech, in my opinion, should be a top 5 one. But I think the last 10 years have
Mhm.
unfortunately dampened what Blacksburg used to be, which is a shame because it is one of the most insane environments you can go to in any sport. But I think it's in the right spot personally. That's all I had to say.
Yeah, that was my thought too. I was thinking like with Virginia Tech, it feels like that might be like, and not a bad thing that they're doing recentism, which is it's like, well, it feels a little less like because I remember when that place seemed terrifying, especially when they were they made it to the national title game and all that stuff. Like, I mean, then Virginia Tech, like everyone's just talking about like it's such a tough place to play, and you don't hear it as much. And I'm sure it could certainly reach that point again. It's not to say like they've been left behind. Giga Gump, what do you think?
I definitely think Auburn getting left out of the top 10 is a pretty wild decision. I spend a lot of time giving Auburn fans a lot of crap, but I'm also like I said, I'm a realist, and there's such a thing as Jordan Hare voodoo magic, and
Yeah.
it pops up more than I would like it to, and I can definitely say that Auburn and LSU and even Mississippi State, honestly, at least as far as when we
Mhm.
play them, because I've been to games in all three of those stadiums, so it's them Auburn especially being left out. I think is pretty crazy, just because
Yeah, I'd
it's
love to
always
go
nice
see a
to.
game in Stark Vegas just to see that and to hear that the bells, hear the bells ringing. Oh my goodness. No, that's a great one. Gosh, you got me thinking. There was another stadium too. I'd love to. Actually, I'd love to have seen them do the reverse, like and maybe in the the reverse in the P4, maybe so we're not necessarily just picking on some of the teams that are G5s that are kind of struggling. But I would have loved to have seen where they ranked UCLA. Like I would have loved to have seen like going into a half empty Rose Bowl with LA fans we're not known for being. I grew up in Southern California. I do get it. We're known for being kind of quiet fans, so like you get actually ultra crisp lines to where your players are going and all of that stuff. You
Yeah,
know,
I was about to say, is there negative rankings you can put on stadiums?
it's so funny too because the Rose Bowl is a glorious place. I mean, but to be fair, that's just the problems of the fickleness of LA fans and exactly where that stadium is. Let's see here, Andrew. You kind of you accidentally got bumped off and you're back on with your hand up, and then I can get to Ski Mask and I also see Major Ingrid.
Yeah,
Andrew.
I'll
Yeah,
just,
go ahead.
yeah,
Mhm.
I'm here. Sorry. I'll just be quick with it, but as someone who has been to many games at FIU Stadium,
Boy, that's quiet.
they are in contention for the bottom of the list. Case in point, I'll just be real quick with this. It must have been the 2021 season. They opened a new student housing facility, brand spanking new, gorgeous place, directly across the street from the football stadium, and it was newly furnished, all that jazz. And they had a drawing for, I think, reduced or supplemented. The school would supplement or cover most of the cost of living there for the first year of that building. And it was empty. I've seen
So if you went to the game, that would have given you that.
it. Well, it gave you the chance to get it. You
Oh,
you
okay.
had
So there
to
was a
be
prize. There
there.
was a prize. I got you.
Right, you had to be there to the third quarter,
Oh,
but there couldn't have been more than a few hundred students that showed up. And at that point, it dawned on me at how bad the situation was at FIU.
Yeah. Ski Master, did you want to join in yet, or I saw your hand went back down, so I wasn't sure.
This is being weird. Yeah. But yeah, I was going to talk about this. Technically, once you're inside of the game and you go inside of Dynasty mode, there's an option to see how your team stacks up, and they will list all the teams 1 to 134, and
Hmm.
so they will they will make it apparent who they think does not have a good stadium atmosphere, and sometimes it can be a little harsh because
Yeah.
also in the game, out like in Dynasty mode versus play now, they're gonna flip the stadium regardless of the stadium, but in
Hmm.
Dynasty mode, if your team's at the bottom of that toughest place to play, you will walk in and there'll be like only 100 fans in the seats.
Oh
So
yeah.
the
Oh
game
man.
is harsh. But speaking on stadiums, I think I heard something about Beaver Stadium saying they might want to sell their naming rights
Yeah, I think it
after
won't
saying
be
they
to
went in
this.
last year.
Yeah, that got kind of interesting too, because it wasn't. I don't know if they're going to necessarily name like the stadium. It's like they get around it by calling it, like whatever Wawa Field at Beaver Stadium or something like that. I think they're going to probably go that route. If they do, sort of like I believe that's what Georgia Tech did. Um, but yeah, I've heard that. That was actually one of these things that we might get to. We'll see here. Yeah, because let me see here. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. They've definitely been having some fun kind of arguing over this. And I know people are having fun with the idea of what it could be. Like Utz Field at Beaver Stadium was one of the Penn State fans' ideas. Um, my goodness. Or, imagine if Oregon State just decides to buy it, buy the naming rights, Oregon State Field at Beaver Stadium would be a funny. Obviously they wouldn't accept it, but my goodness, there were some good ones being tossed around here again, um yeah, so by the way, so I just also want to see here Mage Ingrid, you were able to get you back up here. What did you want to talk about? Oh, can't hear anything on that end. Well, no problem. Let me see here. Looks like we have someone else who wants to join in. We'll get you in here in a second. One other topic. It was funny. We were talking about stadiums. The only reason I wanted to bring this up. There are some new renderings of Northwestern Stadium. Matt Fortuna, who's a great guy. I've had a chance to chat with him in a press box before. He's based out of Chicago, so he shared these. So for those who don't know, Ryan Field was torn down, so they can totally rebuild it. It's going to be called the New Ryan Field at Northwestern, and they needed it desperately for a school that is well known for its journalism department. The press box was quite bad, and so they're going to completely rebuild it. Therefore, that's why for this season and next, Northwestern is kind of playing this weird schedule where most of their home games are going to be, and they've showed renderings of this too, the lacrosse field that's on the lake. So it's gonna kind of have some temporary stands built around it. It's gonna be a really interesting setup. And then there are two big games, home games with Ohio State and the rivalry game with Illinois are going to be at Wrigley Field. So, but anyway, all that said, they're finally showing more developed photos, renderings, I should say, of the stadium, and it looks really interesting. It looks like they're going to do um, that kind of the cantilevered kind of shade around the whole thing, sort of like a European stadium. One of the more interesting, actually, renderings shows the outside in winter, and what it looks like is sort of a European kind of Christmas village, the ones you get in like Germany and Austria. So apparently, part of the plan isn't. I don't know if they're necessarily going to do a Christmas village, but they're definitely going to try and have more events, not just football in the stadium, and certainly creating those kinds of venues with that cantilever roof might also attract some of that as well. There was a bit of. I'm glad they're getting it going. They had to fight the neighborhood on fight the neighborhood on that classic. Um, town and gown, as I like to say, conflict or just NIMBYs and all of that stuff. So that was an interesting one there. Another story that's been getting a lot of discussion this week. Oklahoma is apparently going to give Brett Venables a 6-year contract. Some people are wondering, has he done enough to warrant that 6-year contract, especially when, the OU AD, he's been around a while. He's respected, but it's an interesting one, especially when, locking in a coach, which may potentially lock in a significant buyout. especially at a school like Oklahoma that's about to jump into the SEC when we still haven't seen how that's going to go. A lot of that's been bringing up some interesting questions and discussions there. So if you have thoughts on that, by all means, raise your hand. Would love to hear your thoughts on it as well. But yeah, so I thought I'd bring up a few of those. Let me see here. I just want to check on one quick thing. I just see something just showed up on my screen. I want to make sure we don't blow that up by accident. Let me see. I'm going to let up Jacob. You've been patient. I see you there. Oh, and John, your hand's up.
I'll let Jacob go first, and then you can come
Sure, it
back.
might take a second for him to kind of get.
Hello,
Oh,
can you
there
hear
you
me?
are. Yeah, we can.
Fantastic. I just want to touch back on the stadiums real quick. I know it's a list, I know it's meant to generate, but just purely as a college football fan, kind of just watching these games, never having set foot in any of these stadiums, just as a fan, I'm really surprised Michigan doesn't make the list because I'm telling you, so many games where it was kind of actually hard to hear the broadcast. And, I think back to Tennessee when they beat Alabama 2 years ago. Dude, that crowd was absolutely fucking electric. I don't know if that's the standard at Neyland, but I don't know. I'm surprised Tennessee's not there, Michigan's not there, and you know what? Utah got slept on hard, and I yield the floor.
I'm gonna Ski Mask Smurfy hand went up immediately because he's a Michigan guy. As soon as you mentioned it, so Ski Mask, why don't you start?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we should be higher. Sort of,
Yeah, sorry.
sort of in the same vein of like why I feel Texas A&M should be lower. Like we still have the record for continuous games with over 100,000 fans at our home games. So I feel like that should at least warn us. Like Texas A&M, they're still averaging like around over the past 5 6 years. They're still averaging like around 95,000 for a stadium that's over 100,000. So they don't get their fans there. We do, but also like from a pure sound standpoint, the way the stadium is built, honestly, not as much noise gets down to the field as you would think, just because of the way our bowl is shaped. I would say probably one place that should be up there because I've known people who have gone and they've told me about it. The games are terrifying. Is the Carrier Dome for Syracuse?
Mm.
Very very underrated, but it's 50,000 people and the roof stays on, so all the sound will not leave.
Well, now we know what we got to do. We got to start raising money to put a roof over Michigan Stadium. Some engineering marvel. I have to say, you bring that up because the Carrier Dome was loosely related to the stadium the Gophers were playing in when I first moved here, which was the Metrodome. Now the problem is the Gophers couldn't fill it, and it would fill once a year when it was against Iowa or Wisconsin because those fans would fill up the rest, so it would be a full stadium. But one game, I got to go to one game where they were absolutely going completely bonkers, and I remember it was my second year here, and I got a huge block of tickets for the student. Like I was student government person, dork. Anyway, but we got a bunch of tickets, like 100 tickets for some law students to go to this thing. And the reason it was such a big game is because Minnesota was undefeated, Michigan was looking weak, and it was going to be the first time in seemingly ages that Michigan was going in the lower ranked team against Minnesota, and due to a turn of events, the Twins were going into the playoffs, the pennant race. So they needed, because they shared the stadium, they needed the game on Saturday and they had priority. So ESPN agreed we'll work with Minnesota, we'll move the game to Friday night. It'll be the only college football game on Friday night. And so that just drove people into a tizzy. Like it actually nearly sold out the stadium, being all Gopher fans, which I'd never seen before, and I don't know if it ever happened since. For that game, that stadium was genuinely louder than anything I've ever heard because then the roof was actually coming into play. But normally the roof wouldn't. So when they were doing their little Gopher cheer at the end, they all spell out Minnesota to prove that they can. Minnes, slower than that. I was actually like, okay, wow, this is actually a headache. Like this is headache inducing, which is a good thing. So yeah, a roof. That's what Michigan Stadium. That's the next step. We got to put a roof on you. I don't know how. We'll figure it out. They got some smart kids in Ann Arbor. Maybe they can do that. Maybe that's what we got to raise some, pass the can around. And see if we can't put a tarp on it. No, our friends at Baylor know all about tarps. We can figure out a way to enclose that thing. John, your hands up.
Yeah, I did have one more thing, but we come back to it after all this. But I was gonna say, yeah, I was surprised West Virginia was not in the top 10, but I realized EA did not have the time to animate pennies, batteries, and things that I can't say on this space being tossed at players and, or fans during the game. So I guess that's why they didn't make the top 10 this time around.
What was the other topic you wanted to hit on?
A more fun one. I know Sicko's Committee in the last 2 weeks have been putting out their multiple part series of best championships that are not recognized by the NCAA. I'm just wondering if you saw that list, if you had a personal favorite of there.
I've glanced at the list. I admit I haven't gone through it. What's yours?
Mine's definitely got to be BYU and hip hop dance championship. I will say they've won. This is not like a fluke. They won it last year as well.
Yeah.
And I have so many questions every time I see it.
I wouldn't be surprised if the guy or the man or the woman that's in the Cosmo Cougar outfit has it, because they always feature videos of that costume mascot doing just the wildest flips and things. So I wonder if that's part of it, because he's got moves. I assume it's a he. I mean, that's Cosmo. I assume it's a he. Ski Mask, your hands up.
Yeah. Off of John's topic, I mean, this is not a non-NCAA recognized championship, but I sort of want to go back to it. The D3 College Baseball World Series. So, I mean, we all probably know about the story of Birmingham Southern.
Yeah.
And they were playing when they literally didn't have a school anymore. But I cannot pronounce it. It starts with an M. But the college who won it, apparently in Division III baseball, they won it. Apparently they started a trend, and I checked the stat books and records. They started a trend where basically now guys just choose to get hit by pitches at an alarming rate. If you check the NCAA record books, which they do not account for the 2024 season, but they account for the top 40 seasons for teams getting hit by pitches. 19 of them of the 40 are after the pandemic. So for some reason out of nowhere, and the team who won it this year set the record last year, where they got hit by a pitch 3 times a game. So for some reason, coaches just decided to make their guys stand in the box and get hit as an effective strategy, and it's working.
Wow. Yeah, I know the school. It's like Misericordia. I don't know how you say it exactly. I just know the name of it because it's kind of, I believe it's mercy. I think it's like a Latin word. I'm not entirely sure about that, but yeah, Andrew, your hands up.
I just wanted to go back. Well, you mentioned the school. I'm guessing it's Misericordia. I found an article from last year. I'm assuming if it's gone up since then, but they were hit 153 times in 52 games for an eye-popping rate of 2.94 hit batters per game. And again, that was last year. I think it probably went up this year.
No, they didn't match it this year, but this year is also high and still in the record books in the top 40 ever.
I mean, at this point, like if you're the pitcher on the other team, you're like, let's just get these out of the way and just start like throwing it right into the dugout, or what do you do there? I don't know.
Oh, and one more thing before I let it go to John. I posted something on Reddit this week. It's funny that we're discussing stadiums and Michigan. I found out that the record for most attendance in one season is naturally Michigan. They had 880 something thousand. I think that was 2016. So it got me thinking: is a million in the cards at some point? Someone made a good point that it could happen with the new playoffs having games played on campus.
Well, it depends. Like, are we talking like all games total or home games?
For home games.
Home games would be interesting because if they expand the playoff, yes, you get a few teams that might be able to do that. But I'm not sure. It might be because, I mean, all it really does is add a potential for one more home game. And so yeah, certainly that would add it, and a school like a Michigan adds, therefore theoretically a good chunk, but it'd probably be in the 900s range at that point, wouldn't it? I don't know if it would quite cross.
I did the rough math, and Michigan averages about 110, 111,000 attendance per game. If you had a full possible year, which is all three out of conference games are at home, plus you had 5 in conference games, and you had one game in the playoff at home, that would be 9 games. And if you average 111,000 per game, you hit $1 million. So I hadn't thought about that, but it's definitely within the realm of possibility. It would be interesting to see.
Oh, I'm sure if any athletic department worth their salt is their sports information people are going to be absolutely noticing, and we're going to hear that because they're going to want to get people into the stadium, and I think that'll be interesting to see if that pans out. John, your hands up.
Yeah, I was gonna say regarding the Division III team that loves getting hit by balls. When we're talking about sponsorship on the fields, man, if I'm icy hot, I'm the first guy on the phone. I want to talk about a incredible sponsorship opportunity. I think every massage parlor, icy hot ish brand would be, I'd be putting stuff over the field.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, that's some interesting thinking there. That's all I gotta say. Like, no, just lean into it. Lean into it. Like, I mean, I'm trying to even imagine how they're getting coached to do this, but I mean, you know what? Just win, baby. It's the just win. Oh my goodness.
What's the scholarship pitch, or like what's the recruitment pitch?
The scholarship pitch is to your head. That's what it is.
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
Well, I mean, it's like, hey, you want to play? You want to win games? Like, yeah. Like, are you okay being hit by baseballs once or twice a day? Yeah, that's wild.
This is part of the game. This is part of the game. Jacob, your hands up.
The scholarship pitch is simple. Your on-base percentage is going to be off the fucking charts. You'll lead NCAA in all of it.
Oh my goodness. So just wanted to kind of touch on a couple. We've been a little past an hour, so I'm going to touch through. Oh, actually, go ahead, Ski Mask.
Oh, I was just going to comment. The worst part about it is it's Division III, so there are no scholarships.
I know. It's like
for the love of the game.
For the love of the game, I love being hit by pitches. Maybe you get a certain kind of player who's like really weirdly into it. I don't know. Like, I don't get into that. But let's see here. We've got a couple other news and notes. So this was actually announced today. The NCAA Division I Council, and this is something we actually was probably going to happen, but it's now been codified. They've approved the rule change that allow analysts. So we've seen some programs like Alabama is probably the most notable, but many programs have been kind of stacking up, football analysts, offensive analysts, quarterback analysts. They technically could not directly coach players, but now they will be allowed to coach during practices and games. What's the effect of that? It just means, and I mean, there's another in tandem, and I know Chris Vanini has been writing about this as well. They're going to basically have unlimited coaches. This is something that's been coming. It's kind of interesting. Like, I've been listening to conversations about it with a lot of folks, and I think I'm not really overly worried about this. If anything, it's going to help balance the workload of some of these coaches a little bit, because certainly there has been a bit of stress in a lot of the college coaching world. There's so many things they got to keep going. It's not like the NFL is like a breeze, by the way. I just want to be clear. I love when people are like, oh, the coaches are going to the NFL because college is so tough. It's like, it's a little different, but there's going to be folks who can handle it. There are going to be folks who will thrive in it. I have a friend who's an assistant coach of an NFL team, and he's just like, he's actually got his long-term plan set, because he's like, it was weird to hear him say, he's like, I know that on average, people in my profession live to be X number of years shorter than other people because of the stress. And when he said that to me, I'm like, wow. I mean, there's a lot of jobs that do that. I'm not trying to say like that's the most stressful job in the world, but it's not like the NFL is a whole lot easier to be a coach at any level. So what is coming though is essentially the allowance of college football teams not to necessarily be as restricted in what they say. Oh, one other story. And I absolutely am glad I had this on my list of things to talk about, because this was an interview in local Hawaii like news that absolutely the Hawaii AD is fantastic. They have a new one. He just got there, Craig Angelos, and he's reflecting on his first year. They were talking to him, and the quote that really got attention from those of us who are really into this stuff. I'm trying to get a football game out there in Japan. I had a team lined up here to play us over in Japan, like not a Japanese college football team. That would be an absolute massacre. I mean, like an American college football team over there. So anyway, I had a team lined up to play us over in Japan. That's part of the reason I had gone to Japan. Can we take a team to one of the stadiums in Japan and really make a big splash over there? The team has since backed off because of the distance, and they're in another conference now. This is an interesting statement because the Mountain West hasn't seen any changes. If you look at their schedule, they open with a team that used to be in the Pac-12, but we'll set that aside. So he's now looking to see if there's another team that would like to play us over in Japan and help us make inroads there. Now, I think that excites a lot of people. The idea of an international game there. There used to be some fans seem to know that because it's a bit of a trivia thing in the 70s. Wait, 1 second here. This is hilarious. So like I have this is really like I do research, right? So here is a magazine, and obviously if you're listening to this, this is a Japanese college football magazine from 1975. All right, I'm working on it. I'm documenting it for a project that I'm putting together for the College Football Hall of Fame. Long story, but the thing is, I know why a lot of these games started. 1975, if you know, 1976, the bicentennial of the United States. There was a lot of promotion of getting more. College football was already in Japan, but they're like, let's try and get it bigger there. So both a collaboration of the State Department, promoting America kind of department, for lack of a better term, as well as just the Japanese economy. For those of you who know this, Japanese economy in the 70s and 80s was white hot, like white hot. They were just throwing money left and right. So couple of things they did. 1977, the Mirage Bowl, which later became the Coca-Cola Classic, was a game where two American teams would play a regular season game in Japan. It was always announced a year in advance to give everyone time. It was called the Mirage Bowl, but it wasn't a bowl. It was like two conference opponents typically would play each other over there. And then a year or so later, they added the Japan Bowl, which was one of the best college all-star games, like postseason. Like I say it was one of the best only because I looked at some of these rosters in the 80s and it would be like Marcus Allen has just won the Heisman Trophy. He's now going to go play again. Like they were, and basically the essence was they had so much money in Japan and with the roaring economy that they were throwing all these invites to teams to get them to come over there and play. Then they all stopped in the early 90s because if you know your history, their economy completely blew up. It's like 20 years and they still haven't quite reached the level they were at. Like no one wants to have an economy that does that. So that's why those games ended. But that's why it was fascinating to see the Hawaii athletic director saying that now Hawaii is actually being more active there. And to be fair, if you've ever been to Hawaii, it's still got very close ties. It's a closer trip. A lot of Japanese tourists like to go there. So they've always brought back that kind of fandom. There's kind of this permeation of like, oh yeah, Hawaii's like a fun place, all that stuff. So that's I think also why we're seeing Hawaii trying to take this lead to bring college football back to the to the other islands, the islands of Honshu and Kyushu and all of that. But we'll see where that goes. Another kind of fun note, and this is one that some folks have been kind of having some fun with. Texas is going to relaunch the Longhorn Network as a streaming service upon moving to the SEC. So everyone's favorite, the Longhorn Network, which has been the joy of so many conference mates in the Big 12, is going to join the SEC lineup. I just hope they bring back that Christmas live feed of Bevo or whatever it is. Like that one was kind of fun. I've tuned into that one before. That's like the only time I've actually tuned in to the Longhorn Network. Another interesting thing I just wanted to touch on. This is fun because it's such silly beef. FAU and USF are apparently really kind of going after each other. They're both going to be, obviously, they're both in the American Conference now. And it kind of topped off with FAU's football chief of staff firing off on X that at least we have an on-campus stadium and don't need to rent from the city. You're a joke, dude. Like, that's awesome. I love seeing like pettiness and all of this stuff for the record. And if anyone's listening to this, on any sense of regularity, you know that I'm a bit of a booster for not USF, but for the process of getting a stadium built. That stadium is coming, and every step of the way, they seem to be doing it all right. So they do have a stadium coming to USF. It's just going to be a little while longer. I see a hand up from Andrew, and I know you want to chime in on this.
You know me way too well. I'll keep it brief, but I know a lot of UCF fans think we should move on from being rivals with South Florida. I wholeheartedly disagree with that, but it is just so funny to see another program starting to dunk on them. It makes my day, week, month, whatever amount of time. It's glorious.
Yep, rivalries never die. That's for sure. Let's see here. Another interesting topic as we kind of slowly start wrapping this up. I want to credit the Southland Conference. They actually pointed out at one point the Southland, which is an FCS conference, looked like they were getting losing teams, but they were able to shore it up. And now they had a good promotion. They're like, go to all the Southland games, even the away ones. See you in the fall. Because again, this is going back to the whole like best, cheapest beer, best chocolate milk, best animal in a remote controlled car, whatever nonsense that the teams are getting into. The Southland Conference is now the closest knit conference. They actually have ended up being one of the closest conferences, especially in FCS. So they're kind of having some fun exploring that. One of their members, formerly Houston Baptist, they rebranded as Houston Christian. They are now actually trying to stop the settlement that we've all been hearing about, the House settlement, that's going to lead to some payments to the class of former athletes who did not take advantage of NIL, as well as paying current student athletes a share of revenues. They are upset about it. A lot of the smallest schools are. They're basically saying like we were not allowed to give our individual feedback. Our conference, the Southland Conference, was not allowed to give feedback. This has basically been foisted upon us by the NCAA and the FBS programs. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily going to succeed, but we were expecting some of these. I was reading some of the analysis by person I respect a lot. I've actually interviewed him on several occasions, Professor Michael McCann over at the University of New Hampshire, who's expert on sports law. I was looking at some of the things he was writing on it. Basically, they are trying to say, like, because a school like Houston Christian, HCU, they have a lot of students who are on financial aid of some kind. I believe they have 95% or something like that. So they say it's going to cause a diversion of funds away from our mission. They get into some of the legalese that I'm a lawyer by background too, where they're saying it's going to cause our trustees to have to violate their duty. We call it fiduciary duty, which is a legal duty in the sense to running the mission of the school. They're throwing a lot of these things up there, and of course the NCAA is going to say like, look, you are a voluntary member of the NCAA. I mean, the NAIA is out there. You can do anything else you want to do, and you're helping us enforce the rules that led to this lawsuit. So you are kind of part of this. It's going to be up to a judge who is now, to be fair, this is going to take a while. I mean, the fastest this is going to probably get together will be by like a year from today, like not this season. But basically, the parties, the major parties, agreed to the loose terms, like a very kind of skeleton outline of what we're going to do. Right now, they're in the hands, the elbows, the knees in the weeds, however you want to say it. Like they are absolutely creating the long settlement, which is going to outline how all of this would eventually work. That can take a long time, and a lot of beautiful billable hours for those people working at it. But once that gets proposed and the judge sees it, the judge was being asked to consider that some people will consider it unfair, some of these parties, and the judge will eventually get an opportunity to accept the settlement agreement, reject it. We haven't reached that point yet. And that was something I know in previous episodes I've been trying to kind of convey that they may not accept it. But I see a hand up. Ski Mask.
Yeah, on a related subject with the House case, did you hear anything about recently? The NCAA sort of sent like a letter as a friend of the court in relation to the Dartmouth case.
I didn't see it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did, like an amicus brief saying that
Yeah,
they
that's
don't want it. I mean, no, that's what it is. It literally just means friend of the court. So
Yeah,
yeah, no,
I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know the legal
yeah,
terms for
no,
this.
that's what we call him, friend of the court. It's because legalese Lat. I had a law professor a long time ago who used to just say it this way. You're like, usually he's like he joked because he worked at he actually was a Supreme Court clerk, but he's like half the time the old judges would just sit together, not the Supreme Court, but other ones, and use Latin phrases that he's like essentially. I can't help wanting to impersonate him. Essentially, just meant the person with the best evidence should win. So really, a lot of Latin is just a way of keeping people out. It's like gatekeeping function to make people feel like they're dumb. And they've gotten rid of most of it. But when we're talking about documents that lawyers send to courts, it's like we're not in a rush to change it because it's not like most people send an amicus brief. But yeah, so I haven't read it, but I know they're absolutely not in favor of it. So they are going to be writing a very strong friend of the court brief saying, here are all the reasons why, if you agree to allow this to move forward, NLRB, you're going to destroy all of these schools because we're gonna, blah 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 blah. They're gonna go through all their laundry list. They have it at this point. Each side has a very polished, argument for why they should or should not have something. But they definitely want to stop it at all costs. I don't think they will be all that convincing, but I could see that for sure. Let's see here. So, meanwhile, on the same topic, Russ Bjork, who of course is now Ohio State's athletic director. It's so funny for those of you who may not have been paying attention. He was obviously at Texas A&M last time he looked. He said Ohio State's going to be paying athletes the maximum amount, allowed after the NCAA settlement, and expects the school to still be able to fit into Title IX legislation with payments. So no shocker there. They're one of the richest programs, especially in income. They are going to be, because that was the thing. This House settlement, not every school is going to be paying the maximum number that gets thrown out there. They just simply can't afford it. Some schools like Ohio State can't afford it. Alabama absolutely will be able to afford it. Texas, you don't even need to ask. But there are going to be some programs that are going to be somewhere in the middle on it. So it's not going to be everybody. And to some extent, there are understandable concerns that will accelerate a haves versus have-nots, and we'll have to see where that goes as well. Let's see here. We've touched on so many topics. This is just tremendous. Let's skip that one because there's only so much I can take on that. I'm going to actually wrap this up because my goodness, it is we've been going for almost 90 minutes now, even with that weird hiccup where I accidentally stopped the first version of this recording after 5 minutes. This is RCFB Talk 198. I'm Bobak Kyrie. We do these every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 Central. As soon as this is over, each of these two recordings on X will turn into a recording. And then I'll somehow get around to clipping these audio together and putting it wherever you get your podcasts as RCFB Talk, part of that series. And then, I'll eventually maybe even get the video to work on YouTube. Who knows? If you like my voice, I also do a real podcast for the Advanced Media Group. They own like AL.com, Syracuse.com, like MLive, all of those sites. So I do that with Shahan J. Raja. He's CBS sports writer. We do that. It's called the College Football Survivor Show. It's more focused on who's going to make the college football playoff, which 12 teams. It's an exciting race this season, that's for sure. All of that said, I enjoy talking to all of you. It's been a tough week. My last weekend was something else, I can tell you right now. But the opportunity to talk to folks about college football or even the college football video game always perks me up. I hope it perks you up. Hope to have you again joining us on Tuesday night. So on behalf of all of us, thank you. Now I'm going to hang up and listen.